The majority of folks wrongly assume grub is their ultimate priority during financial collapse scenarios. However, the reality of a true societal breakdown reveals something far more terrifying than a hungry stomach. The genuine nightmare begins when the grid fails. Your faucets run bone dry, cooking becomes impossible, darkness swallows your home, and you lack fundamental tools to survive the unfolding disaster. Today, we are diving deep into 12 essential non-edible supplies you must absolutely acquire before the impending market crash wipes out inventory. These are far from frivolous luxuries. They are the exact lifelines required to keep your household functioning while supply chains shatter, inflation skyrockets, and the municipal utilities you take for granted shut down completely. Make certain you stick around until the final crucial item on our list. Why? Because this specific necessity is routinely ignored until desperation sets in and shelves are stripped bare. Taking the number 12 spot is a mobile outdoor cooking burner. The moment electricity vanishes, your beautiful modern kitchen transforms into a completely useless space within seconds. That shiny induction range will not produce any heat whatsoever. Your microwave turns into a quiet box. The espresso machine is completely unresponsive. Suddenly, preparing a basic can of chicken noodle soup transforms into an incredibly frustrating ordeal. Dozens of preppers hoard massive pallets of canned goods in their basements. Yet, they entirely overlook one blazing logistical hurdle. If the electrical grid flatlines, exactly how do you intend to make those meals edible? That specific dilemma is precisely why an off-grid butane cooking apparatus earns a permanent spot in your preparedness cache. It is certainly not a camping novelty. During extended grid-down situations, this compact lifesaver ensures you can provide warm nourishment, sanitize drinking water, heat up preserved rations, simmer pasta, prepare oats, or brew essential morning caffeine. For elderly family members, consuming heated meals provides more than basic calories. It regulates core body temperatures, combats profound exhaustion, and delivers vital psychological comfort while the outside world descends into absolute madness. These compact burners generally operate using small pressurized fuel canisters. A standard 8-ounce fuel cartridge provides continuous intense heat for roughly 90 to 120 minutes, extending even further if you maintain a low simmer. Across the nation, grabbing one of these reliable units will set you back roughly $25 to $45. The individual fuel cartridges usually demand between $2 and $5 apiece, fluctuating based on the retailer and current economic climate. Here lies the massive trap. When a severe hurricane strikes, regional blackouts strike, or transit routes fail, tiny consumables like fuel cartridges vanish from hardware stores instantly. Possessing a pristine burner without its required fuel is exactly like holding a safe combination without the actual safe. Have you ever considered what happens if you neglect the fuel supply? Countless beginners purchase the hardware and completely fail to secure a deep rotation of replacement fuel cells. Every household must calculate their strategy based on duration, daily caloric needs, and absolute survival priorities. You might not require 3 massive feasts daily. Nevertheless, possessing adequate fuel to sanitize drinking water and serve one warm daily meal during the initial chaos is non-negotiable. An absolute requirement is testing your hardware long before disaster strikes. Understand the canister locking mechanism, practice the ignition sequence, master the flame control, and learn proper shutdown procedures. During a frantic emergency, lacking supplies is dangerous, but possessing gear you cannot operate is infinitely worse. If your neighborhood plunged into darkness for 3 consecutive days starting tomorrow morning, would you possess a reliable method to serve your loved ones a steaming plate of food? Moving to number 11, we have survival hydration purifiers. The deadliest threat during infrastructure collapse is rarely a total lack of liquids. The true silent killer is remaining entirely uncertain if the puddle in front of you harbors deadly pathogens. Following catastrophic storms, massive inundations, or municipal utility cyber attacks, your plumbing might still produce pressure, local ponds might look completely full, and precipitation might still soak the earth. But merely because a liquid appears transparent does not mean it is remotely safe for human consumption. Microscopic bacteria, aggressive parasites, and industrial toxins remain entirely invisible without a microscope. Preparedness professionals constantly emphasize that purified hydration stands as the ultimate survival currency. Merely hoarding random jugs is terribly insufficient. Consequently, a portable filtration system must anchor your entire contingency strategy. Contrasting heavily with stacking endless plastic bottles, robust filtration hardware grants you the incredible ability to harvest alternative liquid sources once your initial stash evaporates. Captured rain, stagnant lakes, moving rivers, or suburban streams transform into viable lifeblood if you process them correctly. Certain pocket-sized microfilters excel at trapping harmful biological entities and dirt particles. Meanwhile, chemical purification drops function as ultra-lightweight, easily concealable alternatives if immediate evacuation becomes mandatory. The golden rule is comprehending the strict limitations of whatever purification method you select. Are you aware that a standard hollow fiber tube cannot extract dissolved chemical toxins? Chemical treatments also demand precise dosing and extended waiting periods to neutralize threats completely. Should your gathered liquid appear incredibly murky, allow the sediment to fall to the bottom or strain the fluid through a tightly woven fabric before applying your primary filtration device. Ignoring this basic pre-filtering step will instantly clog your expensive hardware and ruin its lifespan. Federal disaster agencies recommend stockpiling roughly 1 gallon per person daily to cover ingestion and minimal hygiene. Regardless of how massive your basement stash grows, that finite quantity will eventually disappear. A robust filtration device never replaces your primary stash. Instead, it acts as the ultimate insurance policy, granting you the capability to transform dangerous environmental liquids into life-sustaining hydration. While a cooking burner provides a comforting meal, a filtration system defends your internal organs from catastrophic infections. Ponder this critical scenario for a moment. If every single drop of commercial bottled water vanished from your residence by Friday, do you currently possess the technology to make surrounding puddles safe enough to swallow? Entering the number 10 position is a mobile backup battery bank. There exists a specific ambient noise most citizens only register once it completely vanishes. It is the subtle buzzing of electrical current flowing through your walls. A mere 60 seconds after the grid fails, your mobile device drains, the freezer warms up, wireless internet dies, ceiling fans halt, and television screens turn pitch black. The truly terrifying aspect is not the sudden darkness. The creeping dread stems from watching every single modern convenience you rely upon systematically die. That exact moment forces you to recognize the immense leverage a portable energy station provides. Unlike deafening combustion generators, a modern lithium energy block hoards pure power silently and delivers it instantly with one button press. It emits absolutely zero toxic exhaust, requires zero combustible liquids, and operates quietly enough to keep next to your bed, assuming you follow factory safety protocols. A growing wave of households now view these silent generators as mental health investments rather than mere electronic toys. The true magic lies in reviving the specific gadgets you absolutely cannot survive without. A charged smartphone means you intercept crucial broadcast alerts, coordinate with distant relatives, or summon emergency rescue personnel. A digital receiver keeps you looped into local developments when cellular towers inevitably crumble. Bright diode lamps prevent catastrophic stairwell falls when navigating your dwelling past midnight. For aging relatives, auxiliary power ensures breathing machines function seamlessly, while utility crews struggle to mend snapped lines. At that critical juncture, we are no longer discussing mere comfort. We are discussing immediate physical survival. Currently, a medium-capacity energy block holding roughly 300 to 500 watt-hours demands an investment of $250 to $500. Massive units capable of running large appliances easily demand upwards of $1,000. The initial financial sting is noticeable, but when measured against the sheer terror of navigating a freezing, silent house for a week, countless buyers deem it a spectacular bargain. Should you wish to stretch its operational lifespan indefinitely, connecting compatible solar gathering panels allows endless recharging when the skies clear. Sadly, rookies routinely make the catastrophic error of purchasing severely underpowered units. They never bother auditing the wattage draw of their essential medical gear or communication devices. These silent blocks are absolutely not engineered to power a 4-bedroom estate. They shine brightest when restricted to hypercritical communication gear, illumination, minimal cooling, and life-saving medical. Before swiping your credit card, audit your absolute necessities and crunch the true wattage numbers instead of blindly trusting shiny marketing brochures. In chaotic environments, raw electricity represents far more than leisure. It dictates your situational awareness, your communication reach, and your ability to sustain critical hardware when society pauses. If the utility grid collapsed for 3 consecutive nights, would your current battery setup keep your family connected and secure? Securing the number 9 slot is a medical trauma response pack. A vast majority of the population assumes bandages are reserved strictly for horrific car wrecks. Truthfully, the exact issues that flood triage centers are typically minor lacerations, moderate thermal burns, twisted ankles, or tiny punctures that initially seem laughable. The terrifying reality emerges when regional hospitals lock their doors. Local pharmacies completely empty their shelves, or crippled roadways prevent any travel whatsoever. Under those conditions, a tiny neglected scratch easily morphs into a lethal systemic infection if ignored. Consequently, comprehensive medical supplies remain non-negotiable for anyone serious about enduring a collapse. It will not cure severe chronic diseases, but it purchases the single rarest commodity during a catastrophe. Do you know what that priceless commodity is? It is time. Rapidly halting arterial flow, vigorously sanitizing a puncture, and securing a sterile dressing drastically plummets your infection odds. It allows the body to begin cellular repair long before professional physicians become accessible. A robust, foundational trauma kit in this country demands a meager $20 to $30. Its true intrinsic worth infinitely eclipses that trivial price tag. Beyond basic woven gauze, adhesive strips, sterile pads, and iodine scrub, your cache must include inflammatory reducers, topical antibiotics, an accurate temperature gauge, trauma shears, nitrile barrier gloves, and respiratory masks. Should your household include seniors or individuals battling chronic ailments, securing a strict 14-day buffer of their specific pharmacological needs is an absolute mandate. Always stash a physical paper copy of their exact dosage requirements where anyone can locate it swiftly. The gravest error is not skipping the purchase. The ultimate failure is buying a beautiful red box and tossing it into a damp closet for a decade. Countless families crack open their emergency medical box only to find petrified ointments, molded gauze, and missing shears that someone borrowed 3 years ago. Dedicate a brief 10 minutes twice a year to audit your trauma supplies. Toss the expired liquids, replace the missing tape, and upgrade the cheap components. This tiny administrative habit literally prevents amputations. Understand that a trauma kit is completely useless if you faint at the sight of blood. Mastering pressure techniques, basic splinting, and identifying early sepsis markers keeps panic at bay when chaos erupts. You need not possess a medical doctorate, but you must wield enough competence to manage those terrifying first 5 minutes of an accident. Scan your immediate surroundings right now. If a loved one sustained a severe slicing injury this very second, could you deploy sterile gauze within 30 seconds? Or would you waste precious minutes digging through bathroom drawers looking for a filthy rag? Your truthful answer dictates your actual readiness level. Occupying the number 8 position is an all-in-one pocket device, a wobbly hinge, a fused jar, a tightly knotted paracord, a battery hatch that stubbornly refuses to pop open. These sound like incredibly trivial inconveniences until the hardware store is permanently shuttered, the handyman is never arriving, cellular networks are jammed, and you must wrestle with mechanical failures completely alone. Amid severe disruptions, the primary hurdle is not lacking supplies. It is possessing the exact item you need, but remaining utterly unable to breach its packaging, modify its shape, slice its bindings, dismantle its casing, or deploy it properly. That frustrating reality guarantees the Pocket Multi-Tool a legendary status. You do not acquire this to brag to your neighbors. It is a miniaturized mechanic shop engineered to nestle directly inside your fist. High-tier models boast needle-nosed grips, flat and crosshead drivers, tiny snips, razor-sharp steel, metal files, miniature wood saws, and bottle breachers. It remains a singular piece of metal, yet it neutralizes endless mechanical headaches before they spiral into critical failures. Envision needing calories, but your electric can opener is dead. Imagine needing to sever industrial zip ties, secure a failing deadbolt, patch a solar fan, pry a corroded battery hatch, or slash through reinforced. Would you really drag a massive 50-pound steel chest into your living room for those tasks? Without an adaptable pocket gadget, tiny mechanical hurdles can completely derail your survival momentum. For aging individuals, this compact wonder offers massive physical leverage. It weighs mere ounces, folds tightly, and lives comfortably in a pocket. Dragging a massive steel chest from a freezing shed to tighten a single cabinet screw is exhausting and unnecessary. A folded device resting in your kitchen island, vehicle glove box, or bug-out satchel handles an absurd variety of chores with minimal caloric expenditure. Domestically, a premium folding tool demands roughly $30 to $80, while elite titanium variations stretch well past $100. Please, refrain from grabbing a cheap novelty just because the package boasts 40 useless attachments. The cardinal sin of gear acquisition is prioritizing volume over structural integrity. A hunk of steel offering 12 reliable functions, aggressive plier teeth, a surgical blade, and unyielding driver bits drastically outperforms a flimsy 50-function toy that snaps during its maiden voyage. Selecting the correct model is beautifully straightforward. Demand rigid pliers, edge-retaining steel, a reliable can punch, and hardened driver bits. Those specific implements handle 90% of genuine emergencies. Upon purchase, deploy every single arm to guarantee smooth mechanics. Wipe the steel completely dry after wet chores and massage a tiny drop of synthetic oil into the pivot points to prevent corrosion. During peaceful eras, it acts as a fun weekend gadget. But when society grinds to a halt, it morphs into the literal ability to manipulate your environment with a single hand. If your primary flashlight jammed shut tonight, could you pry it open without shattering the plastic housing? Coming in strong at number 7 are liquid hoarding vessels. The general public falsely assumes tossing 3 shrink-wrapped cases of spring water into the trunk equals absolute hydration security. Yet, when municipal pumping stations fail entirely, the critical metric is not your current liquid inventory. The true test is possessing enough sterile, empty capacity to capture the remaining pressurized fluid before your domestic pipes run completely dry. This tiny logistical window is entirely ignored until the faucet emits nothing but a tragic hissing sound. Dedicated hydration vessels empower you to ruthlessly exploit that final golden hour of municipal pressure. Hard plastic containers free of harmful bisphenol chemicals represent the undisputed champions for long-term basement storage. The most universally embraced form factor remains the 5-gallon jug, capable of securing nearly 19 liters of life-saving fluid. According to conservative domestic survival metrics, a single human demands 1 full gallon daily to prevent severe dehydration and maintain absolute baseline cleanliness. Calculate that math carefully. A household containing 4 beating hearts burns through 12 gallons in a mere 72 hours. Suddenly, those 3 flimsy cases of commercial bottles seem terrifyingly inadequate. What is the most catastrophic error inexperienced preppers make with these heavy blue jugs? They fill them a single time, shove them into a sweltering garage, and completely ignore them for 3 years. Stagnant hydration requires aggressive scheduled rotation dictating strict adherence to the molding dates. They demand dark, climate-controlled environments absolutely far away from volatile solvents, petroleum fumes, and harsh bleaching agents. Furthermore, the interior walls mandate rigorous sanitation protocols before the first drop ever enters the neck. A brilliant tactical maneuver involves dispersing your total liquid volume, rather than relying on a single massive barrel. Divide your precious cargo among multiple manageable jugs and hide them across different interior rooms. Should a single vessel suffer a catastrophic puncture, spring a microscopic leak, or grow dangerous algae, your remaining backup supply stays entirely uncompromised. For seniors, a 5-gallon maximum weight limit remains manageable for pouring, lifting, and transferring without tearing spinal ligaments. Bulky blue jugs appear ridiculously boring while society functions normally. But watch what happens when the regional supercenter empties in 10 minutes. Inflation triples the cost of a single bottle, and desperate citizens riot over the final drop. You will suddenly bow down to your plastic vessels. If local authorities broadcasted an immediate 3-day water shutoff right now, could you capture 30 gallons before the pressure died? At number 6, we highlight wearable illumination gear. A chunky handheld torch is universally the very first object humans panic search for when the neighborhood goes black. However, after gripping a cold aluminum cylinder for roughly 10 minutes, a deeply enraging limitation becomes glaringly obvious. You possess precious photons, but you have effectively amputated one of your upper limbs. You must twist doorknobs, swap tiny batteries, read medication labels, inspect the breaker box, carry a frightened toddler, or wrangle an anxious dog. Under those chaotic parameters, stationary beams are insufficient. You desperately require piercing illumination that tracks perfectly with your retinas. This exact biological tracking makes wearable headlamps infinitely superior to traditional handheld cylinders. A standard torch excels at piercing deep wood lines or signaling rescue choppers. A wearable strap light floods your immediate workspace with brilliant white light while preserving total dual-hand functionality. This microscopic tactical advantage becomes incredibly critical when you are patching a shattered window, crawling under a dusty sofa to retrieve a dropped battery, navigating steep basement stairs, or administering emergency medical triage. A dependable strapped diode lamp sets you back roughly $20 to $40. A rugged handheld companion demands $15 to $35. Hunt aggressively for models boasting variable output modes, extreme runtime efficiency, skin-friendly elastic straps, and baseline moisture seals. Opting for systems that devour standard AA or AAA cells guarantees rapid scavenging success when commercial lithium packs vanish. If you select a lithium-ion rechargeable model, you must enforce a strict monthly topping-off schedule. The absolute most foolish financial decision is purchasing a monstrous tactical searchlight that drains its power core in 45 minutes. A blinding beam that mimics the afternoon sun for an hour is utterly useless compared to a subtle glow that survives 3 consecutive nights of terror. The secondary fatal error is burying your illumination deep inside a cluttered closet. When absolute darkness hits, you cannot afford to blind grope through winter coats looking for salvation. Where exactly should you stage your tactical lighting? Stage a strapped lamp hooked to your bed frame, toss one in the vehicle console, and bury one inside your evacuation bag. Leave a powerful handheld torch sitting vertically on the kitchen counter to bounce ambient light off the ceiling. While the grid hums, these gadgets seem completely boring. But when the concrete jungle plunges into pitch blackness, they transform a terrifying labyrinth into a manageable, safe environment. If the grid collapsed instantly, would you willingly surrender 50% of your manual dexterity just to hold a flashlight? Number 5 introduces the magic of reusable energy cells. If a single object on our survival roster completely defies the concept of physical mass versus intrinsic value, it is the humble battery. A solitary AA cylinder weighs barely an ounce and trades for less than a single dollar bill. Yet, during total grid failure, that tiny chemical tube dictates if you can intercept NOAA weather broadcasts, monitor a failing heart rhythm, or banish darkness from a freezing living room. The razor-thin margin separating a calm, organized household from a screaming, panicked nightmare frequently relies on a handful of energized cylinders. This specific arena is where rechargeable chemistry absolutely obliterates disposable alkaline waste. Instead of constantly bleeding cash on single-use acid tubes that inevitably leak and ruin your expensive gear, advanced nickel-metal hydride cells endure 500 to 1,000 brutal draining cycles. Their lifespan purely depends on your charging discipline. Securing a premium charging dock loaded with 4 standard cells requires a modest layout of $30 to $60. Once you pass the 2-year mark of continuous utility, that initial layout looks like absolute theft compared to the mountain of disposable alkaline garbage you avoided buying. More crucially, regenerative power cells do not merely guard your wallet. They manufacture raw independence. When panic buyers strip every cardboard battery display in the county, you simply smile. As long as you command a portable solar array, a crank generator, or an auxiliary battery block, you endlessly recycle your existing chemical cells. I must reveal an incredible secret weapon almost nobody considers: a digital voltage meter. Procuring a standalone battery capacity reader costs roughly $10 to $20. It completely eliminates the dangerous guessing game of mixing dead cells with fresh ones. Instead of blindly tossing potentially viable tubes into the trash, you identify exactly which cells require immediate juice and which hold enough voltage to push a blood pressure cuff. This completely halts unnecessary waste. The deadliest operational mistake is not buying the wrong color wrapper. It is shoving ancient batteries next to fresh ones, blending disposable acid with rechargeable lithium, or abandoning dead cells inside a radio for 6 years until they vomit white corrosion. Did you realize that regenerative cells suffer from parasitic drain if left ignored? They demand quarterly topping off to prevent chemical degradation. Backup units must reside in dark, temperate environments shielded from extreme attic heat. A survival truism states that the smallest components are always forgotten first. In brutal reality, tiny energy tubes command the operational status of your most vital defensive gear. Audit your living room tonight. You will be utterly shocked to realize your expensive survival gadgets are currently paralyzed by corroded cylinders that died during the last administration. Stepping into number 4, we examine industrial waste liners. If catastrophic grid collapse, torrential atmospheric rivers, or municipal flooding struck tomorrow morning, the average citizen immediately hallucinates about tactical knives, freeze-dried beef, and water drums. Only hardened survivalists understand that the most deployed, manipulated, and trusted asset during the initial 72 hours of hell is often a simple, thick, black plastic sack. It sounds remarkably boring, but in a chaotic theater, heavy-gauge plastic dynamically replaces dozens of missing specialized tools. A dense carton of contractor-grade sacks, boasting a thickness of roughly 3 mils and holding 42 to 55 gallons of volume, extracts a mere $20 to $35 from your wallet. In exchange for that trivial sum, you acquire unparalleled environmental adaptability. Caught in a freezing downpour, you instantly fashion a waterproof thermal poncho. Did a falling oak branch shatter your skylight? You staple a massive plastic shield to halt the incoming deluge. Following hurricane-force winds, they haul jagged glass, splintered timber, and biohazardous sludge without ripping open. Should the municipal sewer system reverse its flow, a thick black sack lining a 5-gallon bucket becomes a highly sanitary, odor-trapping emergency toilet. The paramount virtue of thick plastic lies in aggressive asset preservation. Thick wool blankets, crucial identification papers, freeze-dried calories, and sensitive microchips disintegrate rapidly upon contact with floodwaters. A heavy-duty liner waterproofs a canvas rucksack, completely seals a flooded trunk, shields basement cardboard boxes, or acts as a sterile ground tarp while you dissect a broken generator in the mud. Throughout a crisis, shielding your existing inventory demands the exact same urgency as hoarding new boxes. The classic amateur blunder involves purchasing paper-thin kitchen bags to save $4 measly. What occurs when you load 30 pounds of debris into a scented kitchen bag? It violently ruptures, spilling rotting garbage and shattered glass across your driveway. One microscopic puncture completely invalidates its waterproofing capabilities. That exact failure point dictates why you strictly purchase brutal contractor-grade liners. Disperse these black rolls dynamically. Bury one in the trunk, hide one near the circuit breaker, and stuff a handful directly into your evacuation harness. They might collect dust for 3 years. But when the skies open and the roof screams, those black plastic sheets will be the very first line of defense you grab. Number 3 brings us to the flame suppression cylinder. Absolute disaster does not always announce itself with empty grocery aisles or silent power grids. Occasionally, the total destruction of your universe begins with a single silent orange spark. A skillet of neglected bacon grease, a heavily overloaded power strip hidden behind a couch, a cheap lithium charger ignoring voltage limits, or a combustion generator improperly staged near a wooden deck can summon a roaring inferno in 60 seconds. During stable times, massive red trucks arrive screaming with sirens in under 6 minutes. But what occurs when a regional earthquake shatters the asphalt? Those critical 6 minutes stretch into 3 days of isolation. Therefore, an aggressive suppression cylinder is never a mere compliance decoration. It is your only viable weapon to execute a heavy attack on a hostile fire during the first 30 seconds of ignition, long before it scales the curtains. Procuring a commercial-grade, multi-use dry chemical cylinder demands $35 to $70 of capital. That incredibly tiny expenditure stands guarding an estate worth hundreds of thousands, a reliable escape vehicle, and irreplaceable photo albums. The zones harboring the highest combustion statistics are invariably the spaces you inhabit constantly. Your culinary space weaponizes hot oils and exposed coils. Your automotive shelter traps highly volatile gasoline, paint thinners, and engine. Auxiliary battery banks emit intense thermal loads during heavy charging. Consequently, you must mount your suppression gear where your hand naturally falls. Position it adjacent to the danger zone, yet far enough away that a sudden flare-up does not physically block your gripping hand. If your daily commute involves endless highway miles, strapping a dense, compact chemical cylinder to the passenger floorboard is non-negotiable. The ultimate tragedy involves a homeowner dutifully purchasing a red tank and totally abandoning it to the dust. The internal pressure gauge slowly bleeds into the red zone, the chemical powder compacts into a solid concrete block, or the firing pin corrodes shut without anyone noticing. Are you willing to lose your home because you skipped a 30-second inspection? Investing 2 minutes on the first of every month to flick the gauge, verify the metal pin, and shake the powder prevents catastrophic total losses. However, if the ceiling is melting and toxic black smoke drops to your knees, abandon the structure instantly. Proper preparedness never dictates burning to death over replaceable drywall. You sacrifice decades building your castle, but fire only requires 3 minutes to reduce it to gray ash. Number 2 commands attention with the moisture-proof paperwork sleeve. If a screeching siren dictated you abandon your property in precisely 4 minutes, what physical objects do you grab? Amateurs scramble for granola bars, heavy water jugs, or random bottles of aspirin. However, once the smoke clears and the floodwaters recede, the most agonizing, soul-crushing barrier to rebuilding your shattered life is the total loss of bureaucratic proof. Calories are easily scavenged within a week. Bureaucratic identities are decidedly not. Federal travel books, embossed birth records, legal marriage binders, health coverage proofs, deeply detailed surgical histories, notarized property titles, and motorized vehicle ownership slips become absolute nightmares when soaked in toxic floodwater or incinerated. Reconstructing a vanished identity from scratch requires agonizing months of standing in lines, begging officials, and fighting algorithms. You will need those exact documents immediately to prove you own your land, extract insurance payouts, or cross restricted borders. A rugged, flame-retardant, and water-sealed document vault requires a laughable $15 to $30. That minuscule investment permanently shields your entire legal existence from moisture, mud, and flying embers. Demand a vault featuring overlapping waterproof zippers, thick silicone-coated fiberglass layers, and a wide mouth capable of swallowing uncreased legal sheets. To guarantee absolute invincibility, double seal your critical papers inside sliding plastic baggies before shoving them into the master vault. Never rely strictly on raw paper. Forge duplicate copies and load encrypted digital scans onto a hardened thumb drive or push them into a heavily guarded digital cloud locker. When exhausted relief workers demand instant verification, handing them a flawless photocopy bypasses weeks of bureaucratic suffering. Never bury your protected vault beneath a mountain of winter sweaters. Stage it aggressively close to your primary evacuation bags, ensuring every mature household member can snatch it in total darkness. If a wildfire roared down your street right now, would you genuinely have time to pry open a rusty filing cabinet? A high-tech document sleeve does not merely guard bleached paper. It fiercely defends the undeniable legal proof of the exact life you spent 50 years sweating to build. Finally, claiming the absolute #1 spot, we have bathroom tissue and body care basics. Anyone who lived through the chaotic spring of recent years vividly recalls the absolute barren wasteland of the paper aisles occurring in mere hours. That specific panic permanently proved a terrifying truth. When the collective psychology snaps, the first commodities to evaporate are not always edible. They are the deeply ingrained daily sanitation crutches that modern humans refuse to live without. Rolls of tissue, moist antibacterial towelettes, heavy bar soap, Fluoride paste, bristled brushes, and harsh alcohol gels seem like trivial afterthoughts, yet they govern your physical dignity and baseline health. Enduring a collapse without them for even 96 hours spirals your existence into a filthy, humiliating ordeal. For aging bodies and vulnerable toddlers, maintaining aggressive sterilization directly slashes the horrific threat of sweeping bacterial infections. You are entirely not required to stuff a shipping container full of tissue. The brilliant logistical angle is strictly maintaining a rolling 90-day buffer, aggressively rotating the oldest stock into immediate strike hard when bulk warehouse sales hit, completely ignoring the temptation to wait until news anchors start screaming about shortages. Simultaneously, ruthlessly audit your pastes and gels, immediately tossing anything sporting separated liquids or expired dates. Never neglect constructing a miniaturized sanitation pouch strictly dedicated to your vehicle or heavy bug-out pack. Shove a folding brush, travel paste, a dense sliver of soap, alcohol wipes, and sanitizer gel into a waterproof baggie. These items command nearly zero physical mass in a backpack, yet they inject massive psychological morale if you are trapped in a filthy high school gymnasium for a week. The brutal historical lesson remains absolutely valid right this second. Extreme panic absolutely does not target the canned bean aisle first. It aggressively targets the exact items required to maintain civilized dignity. Stocking these goods is not driven by crippling paranoia. It is a calculated, cold strategy to guarantee your immediate reality remains sanitized, tightly controlled, and beautifully normal, while the surrounding population descends into pure savagery. Proper survivalist mindsets reject hoarding worthless trinkets or surrendering to paralyzing fear. True readiness demands identifying the microscopic, mundane objects that exert massive leverage when the system cracks. A thick black trash liner, a chemical fire killer, a silicone document vault, or a stack of clean towels heavily outweigh tactical sniper gear when reality bites hard. If you extracted immense tactical value from this exact blueprint, aggressively broadcast this to your trusted circle. They absolutely deserve a fighting chance to fortify their own walls before the supply trucks permanently stop rolling. Now, I want you to head down below and like this video, and make sure to type out my channel in the comments so I know you made it to the